Appreciative education. I'm sorry, that says advising. It's education in general. But it comes out of Florida Atlantic University, where they have the Office of Appreciative Education. And this applies to mentorship, relationships, advising, teaching, all sorts of things. So it is applicable to any sort of position that you may hold currently. So, appreciative education, like I said, is a research based, generative, and intentional theory to practice framework for creating educational spaces in which people love to learn, work, and thrive. And that is directly from FAU's website. Um, Generally, the big idea is that building these positive relationships and assisting in their personal goal achievement by helping them reflect on what they actually want, what they actually enjoy, is the best way to help develop students' sense of agency and self-efficacy. So we're not trying to teach them or tell them what they want to do. We want to hear what they want and then help them get there very intentionally. So, appreciative education kind of works in a cycle. So, we're going to start at phase one and we'll go through each phase throughout this presentation, but this is kind of just a general overview. They all start with a D because education loves alliteration. So, disarm is phase one. Then we'll move into discover. Dream will be phase three, and then design, deliver, and don't settle. Those words will make a little more sense as we work through the presentation. But just to preface as a little bit of a disclaimer, these are things that are not all going to happen in one meeting with a student. So, say you have a student coming into your office as a faculty member to talk to you about they want to get involved in research, or they're starting to think of companies that might make sense for the major that they're studying. And they've identified you as someone that they respect and they value mentorship wise, and they're coming to you to ask, how do I get where I'm going? They are going to want to start in the design phase. A lot of us as humans, we are task oriented, we are goal oriented, and we want to say, here's where I want to get. How do I get there? But as you can see, there's three whole phases before we get to step four: disarm, discover, and dream. And those are actually very critical pieces that take maybe 5 minutes of time. So we got to work through those three first. And in a career development kind of mindset, as we're sitting here in this training, we will get to design, but it might not happen right off the bat. It might not even happen in that first session. And that's what's so beautiful about this framework is it's all about building that rapport throughout several meetings. So you're not meeting with one student trying to cram all these six things in one session necessarily. So don't get overwhelmed if that's what it seems like. So with that, here's a little kind of just design, or I guess the logo of FAU's appreciative education. Again, it does say advising because they kind of tailor things to advising, but it is an overall educational practice. As you can see, it is cyclical. So once you start at disarm, and then you can work your way all the way through to don't settle with a student. And then maybe they come back and want to work through another goal and you're going to start over from the beginning. So that is just something to kind of keep in mind as we're working, that it is going to be a very cyclical process. FAU does have a quick guide of resources. If anyone wants to scan this, it'll take you directly to their website where you can get different questions that you can ask. You can find a little photo of that cycle that you can print off and have in your office if you're interested. And I do have this QR code at the end of the presentation as well. So if you don't need to look at it right now, totally fine. We can scan it again at the end. I'll give y'all a couple seconds to pull that up if you need to. Alrighty, awesome. So phase one, disarm. It is exactly what it sounds like. Think about when you're walking into, for example, a doctor's office, somewhere where you've never been before, you've never met this person before. All you know is that they have knowledge that you want. You're walking into their office. Hopefully, they stand up and they greet you and they say, "Hi, I'm glad to see you. Welcome, glad you're here." And their body language is open and relaxed, and they're looking at you. they are not, finishing an email on their computer or they're not on the phone as you walk in, because both of those things, that type of body language tells the person walking into that office, oh, I'm interrupting. I might not be in the right place. I maybe didn't come at the right time. So this is why Disarm, like I said, it's going to take you less than 5 minutes to, even if you do need to finish up a quick email or something, make eye contact with that student that's walking in, or if you can, go out to the lobby to greet them and walk them back so that they feel that they're in the right spot. I do see things in the chat popping in and out. I'm sorry, I'm not paying attention to the chat currently. Oh, QR code has been disabled. I will put the link in the chat at the end. So glad you guys said that. Sorry about that. Yes, you can search Office of Appreciative Education, Florida Atlantic University on Google, and it'll pop right up if you want to kind of look through that as we're chatting. I'm glad y'all mentioned that. Awesome. So yeah, Disarm. It takes, 2 minutes to make sure a student feels welcome, not necessarily is just told hello. But just making sure that you are very intentional about this, because we know there are a million things on our plate as educators. There's always going to be something going on in the background that might be taking priority in our brain. But if there is a student in our office hoping to have a discussion with you, they really deserve as much as your undivided attention as possible that you can get. Let me just make sure the chat. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Suzanne. Awesome. So that's phase one. Super quick, super easy, takes max a minute or two. Here are some questions that you can use to kind of disarm people. So I like to stay away from the how are you? Because, we're kind of almost trained to say, oh, I'm good. And that's that. So these questions kind of digging into a little bit more specific. So they actually have to think about their answer and can give you a more thoughtful and authentic answer. So just some good ones. What has been a highlight of your week so far? I'm thinking about going on a walk or going to lunch on campus later this afternoon. Do you have any recommendations? So right off the bat, they are not only feeling welcome in your office, but they feel like they're actually contributing to the conversation and giving you something useful as well, something helpful. Another good one is, what was one activity you enjoyed this weekend? That can kind of help if they mention, they traveled to the Whitewater Center. That gives you a little bit of that connection that you can say, oh, I've never been there, or oh, I went last year and I loved it. Just kind of getting them a little bit more comfortable before jumping in to the meat and potatoes of the conversation right away. So super easy. And then we move into discover, which this is, I think I'm a little biased to this phase because, like I said, I love just getting to know students and understanding what their interests are, what their hobbies are, things that they struggle with, what they want to get better at. And this is the phase that we do that in. So again, it doesn't have to be super long. It can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe of just open-ended questions. And that QR code that did not work on the website, there are some questions that FAU also recommends on here. They're going to be open-ended. So things like, what goals are you working on right now? What do you want to do after you graduate? So things that, again, make them think a little bit, but just give you a little bit more insight into what their plans are, what their goals are, why they're coming into your office. Active listening is a huge part of this phase. I do not have to preach to teachers about that. I know you guys know how important it is that we are not only listening, but being active participants in the conversation, asking follow-up questions, making eye contact, ensuring that our body language is open and engaging with whoever's speaking at the time. And then this is one of my absolute favorite reasons why Discover is my favorite phase, the strengths-based story reconstruction. We are going to do a little partner activity here in a minute with this. So just so you fully understand what is going on, strengths-based story reconstruction is all about when you are talking to a student or you're talking to a colleague or you're talking to whoever, and they're telling you something maybe that they're struggling with, or maybe that they are working on, a way to connect with them and help them see that you are really here to meet them where they are at and help them get to where they want to go is to retell their story with a strengths-based lens. So just as an example, if I was talking to Suzanne, and maybe Suzanne, I'm going to use you as an example if you don't mind. I know Suzanne just went through finishing a fine arts degree, and perhaps maybe she was sitting there and she was telling me, I really love this particular class because I get to really practice my creativity, and I've made a great connection with the professor. But this other course I'm struggling in because it's at a different time of day. I don't know the professor or the students super well. And, she's kind of just going on and talking. And then as I'm active listening, I'm listening for the strengths in her story, her personal character strengths. But she's sharing that she may not really understand how big of a part they're playing in these struggles or the things that are going well. So when she's finished telling me, I'm going to say, oh, wow, it sounds like you have really made an effort to connect with the people around you in your program, that you are really passionate about creatively making things. And you may be struggling with the timing of your classes, but that tells me that you really value professionalism and you really value showing up on time to things so that you can really manage your time well. So it's really just retelling exactly what she said to me. So she knows I heard you and I was listening intentionally. And I'm pointing out the positive strengths that maybe she wasn't aware of. Alrighty, so now we are moving into the dream phase, which, Suzanne, I feel like this is your phase. In the dream phase, we are taking the discovery that we just made about our students and asking them, if there's no limits, what do you want? What does your life look like? We are not yet to step four. Like I said, we are not to the design where that's the make a plan. Here's step one, step two, step three. We are in the open possibilities. What does your life look like if you had all the resources all the time? What do you want? What's that look like for you? It is not about choosing the most realistic path. It is simply about putting to words what this looks like for them in their mind. And a lot of students, they might struggle with this. They might say, I just want to graduate. All I want to do is get a job. And that's where we come in as mentors to say, okay, and then after that, what would you love to do in that job? What would you love to do? What would bring you happiness and joy and fulfillment after you graduate? You can really be intentional about making connections between what you learned in the discover phase into this dream. So say, for example, a student tells you, my biggest dream is to open a veterinary practice one day. And they're in their first biology class freshman year, and you're like, okay, incredible. This is a great dream. I remember when you were telling me about your bio class and you were mentioning how the specific things that you're learning, they really stick with you. And that is such a strength that can build you up into that veterinary career, because vets have to know a lot of information, so helping them kind of build those bridges in their mind teaches them that it is okay to dream big. It is okay to be excited about big, huge, scary things. And they're going to be really personal. These dreams are going to be really important to them. So again, just highlighting that active listening continues through the whole cycle of appreciative education. And then also reminding students there's going to be more than one right answer. There actually is not one right answer to what you want, what your life dream is. Oh, sorry, let me go back. The resources that I will share at the end of this, with the QR code that unfortunately was broken, there will be specific questions that you can use to kind of help guide these conversations. Again, it can be as short as 2 to 3 minutes, or it can be, your first session, you talk about your dream and then you say, okay, we're going to schedule a follow-up and come back and start working on the steps for this dream. So this can take as long or as short as you like. Now we're finally to where we want to go as educators, as helpers. We're going to start helping them make decisions. We're going to continue to give positive feedback. We're going to help them keep it simple, because a lot of this can be really overwhelming when you go from, here's my big, huge life goal dream, And then how do we bring it down to one step? That transition can feel very overwhelming because there's a lot of steps to take before you can, own a vet practice or be an Olympic athlete, whatever it is. Um, Kind of just teaching them like, okay, this is going to take a long time, but with this one simple step, we can get one simple step closer. And then this is also where we're going to start thinking through all of our resources that we have at UNC Charlotte or across our professional network. What effective referrals can we make for this student? Because the reality is, you cannot handhold a student through this whole process. There has to be other people in their support network, whether it's their family, other professors, people in the student engagement office or in the career center, previous teachers they've had. What other connections can you help this student identify or re-engage with that will help them as you're identifying kind of the next steps for this plan? Down here at the bottom, we have some example questions that you can ask to kind of guide this design conversation. What change might you need to make in order to meet your goals? Who are some people in your life who can help you reach these goals? So again, we're not necessarily dictating this for them. We are here as a mentor to help them identify the next steps on their own. Because if there's anything that we know as educators, um, we might want something so badly for a student, and if they don't want it as bad for themselves, they're not going to do it. And we can't force them to do it. So helping them kind of just get those wheels turning of what is my next right step? What is going to put me one, two, three steps closer to this big, huge goal that I identified with the strengths that we've talked about, with the positive feedback, all those things. So in order to kind of help get those gears turning, we have another little activity, but this one is solo. So I'm going to ask you, whether it's on your phone or you have a sticky note next to you, you're going to need to write some things down. Um, we're going to pretend like we're having a conversation with a student, but in this case, we are the student. So someone is sitting here telling me, if you're the CEO of your life and you're working to get to this huge goal that you've just identified, who is on your board of directors? Who are the 5 people in your life that you trust to give you advice, that you can lean on in times of struggle, that you can ask questions to, any of this? And the idea here is to help them identify that not one single person is going to have the answers for every area of life. So, for example, who is someone you can ask for professional help from? Who is someone you can ask for personal advice from? Who is someone you can ask for health suggestions for? There's all these different domains of our life that are going to add up all together to take us to our goal. And we need to have people on our board of directors that is going to help us in each of these domains because they have different levels of expertise. So, for example, if you're talking to a student, you can say, I am happy to be your academic and career development person on your board of directors, but I'm not really comfortable talking to you about your mental health or your relationship with your family, whatever it is. So, helping them identify these 5 people. So, I'm going to give you, let's say, 3 minutes to just jot down who your personal board of directors would be. We're not going to share this out. Don't worry. If this is a very personal thing, but just to kind of get some experience with how this goes. So, um, awesome. So that is our personal board of directors. I do encourage you to continue to think about that. It's going to grow and change throughout your life. So kind of maybe revisit every year, every 6 months, whatever it is, to kind of keep that updated. And then using this activity with students is really helpful too, if you have time, or you can always, send them home with homework from your appointment if necessary. So up next, this is where we get to send them out of the nest and they got to go do what we want them to do. Phase 5 is called Deliver. This is where students are in charge of delivering on the plan that we just co-created in the design phase. Advisors, mentors, faculty members, they're going to be available there for them to kind of check in, or if they need a little bit more of a push, some accountability. but they really have to be the ones to go out and do them on their own, do whatever it is. Maybe the person who wanted to get to own their vet school, you told them, okay, go research 5 vets on LinkedIn and see how they got to where they were at. Um, they got to go and do it. And you can't check in with them every 30 seconds to say, how many vets did you look up? Um, all you're in charge of in this phase is kind of saying, okay, here's what we discussed. Here's the plan that we just made. Does this feel doable? How do you feel about it? Something else that I really love that this framework teaches us to ask is there anything else I should have asked you or that you wish we had discussed in this session? Because a lot of times a student will come in with a specific goal in mind, and then our goal of the meeting, which is to get them out of there on time, did not align with what they wanted. We need to hold space for them to give them the chance to kind of voice any questions or remaining requests or maybe something that just popped up throughout the conversation. And phrasing it in this way kind of is like a let me make sure you got what you needed, because that's not always the case when people are coming into our appointments. And it's hard to leave a meeting being like, oh, I wish we'd talked about this. If you ask them this question, then they can't leave your office and say, well, you didn't tell me to do this. Like, it kind of pushes that accountability onto them, and then encourages them to kind of just follow through with those expectations. And then lastly, we go into the don't settle phase. This phase is kind of hard because it's not going to happen in your appointment with this student. This is where the continued relationship, the continued rapport, continued communication, whether it's over email or in an actual appointment, um, you get to continue following up with that student and review and celebrate their achievements and retell them to them in that strength-based perspective. You get to check in with the goals that you made, see if they've gotten there, see what roadblocks they're struggling to get over, maybe challenge them. That's where the don't settle comes in, is if they come to you and they say, I met my goal, you get to say, okay, awesome. What are we working on now? What's next? What's the next step to getting you towards this career that you told me you wanted in the dream phase? Um, and then helping students raise their internal bar of expectations. I think that is one of the biggest privileges that we have as educators. We get to not only give them the tools and the resources, but help them challenge themselves internally, because they're going to graduate someday. You might not hear from them after you graduate, but they're going to leave and say, every time I talk to Dr. Voigt, I felt so empowered and so encouraged to keep growing. I want to keep doing that in my life. I felt so encouraged and so appreciated when I had these conversations with my faculty mentor or my staff mentor, that my internal bar of expectations for myself has grown. Um, so that's where the don't settle comes from. And again, it's hard because we don't always see the we don't always get to reap the benefits and see them right away as someone who poured in all this time for a student, but it is going to very positively affect their own life. So in conclusion, appreciative education, really the goal is to just empower students to thrive both academically and personally in their career development and their personal development through this intentional fostering of positive relationships and rapport. We went over the 6 phases: disarm, discover, dream, design, deliver, and don't settle. And in these phases, you guys have the chance to really encourage students to build their self-efficacy and to reach their full potential based on what they want, what they actually want. So I think that is the end. I do have the QR code on here, but I will actually just look for the website and send it in the chat. But if anyone has questions, feel free to unmute or put them in the chat.